Spring scrimmage number 2, CJ, for the Longhorns. Big recruiting weekend on the 40 acres, but it was a big weekend for the Longhorns on the field. We got a coaching clinic today. Lots of good feedback from the scrimmage, but let's start with this. A lot of guys have been limited out this spring. You had Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore recovering from a hamstring and a toe. Derek Williams recovering from that torn ACL he had last year in the OU game, but CJ, sounds like those guys are in some way, shape, or form starting to work their way back.
Yeah, and that's a great sign for Texas. Of course, not having either wide receiver, that hurts, right? And of course, Derek Williams has been limited, and he's been out all the way going back to the Oklahoma game last year. But they all suited up. They were all back at practice. To what extent? Well, it doesn't sound like they were fully back and active, as you would expect. They're being eased back into the swing of things. But certainly to see them in pads, participating in light work drills, great sign for Texas.
So some of what we heard is it's kind of a good news, bad news deal when you talk about a scrimmage. The good news is it sounds like the defense might have overall won the day. We'll continue digging into that, but at least it sounds like in short yardage situations, the defense got the best of the offense. Now you like that from your defense to be stepping up, but CJ, I know that's not going to make a Texas fan feel good knowing how critical short yardage was last year. Texas fell short in short yardage. So again, it's a good news, bad news kind of deal, but it seems like short yardage might be an area where Texas still needs some work.
Yeah, actually a pretty solid return in terms of what we've heard about the defense in certain situations. I was told that there's a 3rd and a 4th down situation that the defense actually came up with 2 big run stops to force a stop of the first-team offense. There's a trip to the red zone by the first-team offense that, look, it took them several plays to punch it in. But it wasn't easy going, especially in those short distances. And this is kind of what Texas fans were hoping, especially you and I, when we talk about this new group of offensive linemen. How quickly do they gel? Because we all look at what they're able to do in terms of their skill sets physically on the interior, saying, okay, a push up front should be improved this year. So far, scrimmage 1 into the spring, have yet to see it, but that's a great note for the defense.
Yeah, defense probably should be ahead of the offense, especially with how many new faces there are on offense. CJ, let's stay on offense. We talked about Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore.
Yeah.
We'll stick at wide receiver. Dalen McCutcheon's name continues to pop up. Heard it a few times today about Dalen McCutcheon having a nice scrimmage.
Yeah, I heard his name a handful of times. Really, it was impressive. And this is, again, going on to what we've talked about with Dalen coming into this spring with no DeAndre Moore. This sets up perfectly for him to get extra reps, get some big-time reps with the ones. And he's taking full advantage, Jeff. We've talked about it, and I've said it since he signed with Texas. He's going to be one of your best route runners in the slot. He's already making moves. I was told he had a number of catches over the middle today with Arch Manning. That connection, again, seems to be moving pretty well. So that first-team offense, if you want to go through the quick position groups, of course, it's Spencer Shannon at tight end, Dalen McCutcheon at the slot. You have Jamie French running at one side and Parker Livingstone on the other side, both of them at the outside spots. But that's kind of your group right now. And, of course, Trey Wisner. And, Jeff, I've heard plenty of positives about Trey. We got to speak with him last week. Trey Wisner looking like he's ready for a big junior season coming up.
Yeah, strong spring for Trey Wisner. Christian Clark continuing to work his way back and making some noise. It's not a given that Jarrett Gibson's going to be the number 2 running back on this team. You know, C.J. Baxter still on his way back. James Simon's name got brought up a lot this week. It sounds like he's starting to figure some things out. So depth, Texas is getting some depth in the running back room. But C.J., other than Dalen McCutcheon, stop us if you've heard this. The name that keeps coming up whenever we hear from sources about what's going on offense, Nick Brooks is an area where we can only report what we're told. We keep being told Nick Brooks continues to show out and make his presence felt. I love that from a freshman offensive tackle. It sounds more and more like Kyle Flood really hit a home run with Nick Brooks.
Yeah, I know Jerry Hamilton's mentioned a few times, but in terms of what his overall end ranking was whenever he was done in high school and what Texas got out of him, it's night and day, right? Whatever that evaluation number was, not close to what Texas is seeing and getting on the field. That's a great sign. Of course, tackle positions, that's one of your marquee money positions, right? Yeah. You got to make sure that you have a Kelvin Banks, a Trevor Gooseby, somebody in the fold to protect your quarterback's blind side. And to your point, Nick Brooks, I can't tell you how many times that we've stood right outside of DKR, listened to sources, whether it be high school coaches, visitors on campus, prospects, recruits, sources just everywhere saying Nick Brooks having a heck of a spring. And that was evident again once today.
Not just that, but this week Sark mentioned him by name, Arch Manning mentioned him by name, Trey Wisner mentioned him by name. So Nick Brooks, Well, all indications are having a really, really good camp. CJ, just flipping over to the defense. Sounds like some of the young defensive backs starting to show out. Cade Phillips' name popped up a little bit. Again, some of those younger guys in the secondary. We first Santana Wilson's had a good spring, but today sounded like it might have been a day where Cade Phillips, I don't want to say separated himself, but at least established himself that he's going to be in that mix for that corner spot opposite Manny Muhammad.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about Cade Phillips. Again, 5-star guy stepping up, and by now you should be a little bit more comfortable in terms of what you're able to bring to practice, what you expect in practice every day. On top of Cade Phillips, we heard a lot about Kobe Black as well today, and that's a great sign as we kind of peel back who might be that opposite corner of Manny Muhammad. Is it Jalen Gilbo? Is it Kobe Black? Right now, it sounded like Kobe Black had a great scrimmage today as well. And then moving back to safeties, look, we've heard all about Michael Taft. We know what kind of guy he is back there. Jelani McDonald was mentioned. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Derek Williams is able to push his way back into this conversation. Of course, now back in pads, we'll see how quickly he's able to get up to speed and, as close to full 100% as possible.
I still like the potential of Texas to run some 3 safety stuff. We saw them do that last year in the Ohio State game.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith didn't go anywhere in the offseason, so you're probably still going to need to show some of that against Ohio State. I love Jelani McDonald, how he profiles to the middle safety in that defense. But if you got Michael Taft and Derek Williams, that would be a really good 3 safety group. Like I said, we'll see what happens with Derek Williams and his injury recovery. One other name I wanted to mention, too, we always talk about Anthony Hill, and everybody always has good things to say about Anthony Hill. Linebacker Fowle's name got mentioned, too. After today's scrimmage. And I think it just drives home, CJ, the depth this team has at linebacker now. Because Anthony Hill's not going anywhere. Linebacker Fowle emerged as a starter last year. You've got Brad Spence. Ty Anthony Smith is going to have a role. So we all rightfully so talk about Anthony Hill, but this is a linebacker position that Jeff Choate started it. Johnny Nanson's taking the ball and run with it. That's a position of strength now for Texas.
Yeah, and it's always interesting when you talk about how versatile and creative Texas can be blitzing from that second line. You hear Brad Spence, you hear Trey Moore now, who had another impactful showing in the scrimmage today, and Anthony Hill. Well, what does that leave you? It leaves Ty Anthony Smith and Linebacker Fowle. Their impact needs to be felt a lot more in coverage, right? And when they're filling and running the pursuit angles, filling holes, reading run lanes as well. For Linebacker Fowle, we've seen what he's able to do, right? Immediately last year, he was able to take over that role from David Benda in a sense that, hey, every time he was on the field, Jeff, he's getting an interception, he's forcing a safety, he's finding his way into the backfield for a sack or a forced fumble. He's more of that disruptive guy, as well as Ty Anthony Smith, who we heard a little bit about this afternoon, having a big day.
Oh, and the other name we heard was Colin Simmons. Everybody that goes out to practice, that watches Texas, comes away impressed with Colin Simmons. I don't think that surprises anybody, but CJ, it doesn't temper our expectations for what we're expecting from Colin Simmons this year. We all expect a big year from number one.
Yeah, to put it in the words of Trey Wisner, definitely Colin Simmons, right? So, it's going to be a constant. I will say this. There was no Zina Umeozulu. We talked about the positive health news coming back today. That was, I would say, maybe a par, right? We're holding serve there with Zina. He's dealing with a bit of a thumb injury. Bobby Burton reported on that last week. He was out of practice. Colton Vosick remains out of practice. So the two of them at the edge spot, a little bit lighter, right? So that left you Lance Jackson running second team off the edge, giving him more valuable reps. Again, we talk about edge is going to be a strength of this team. Right now in the spring, it's a little light. Your first team edge guys, of course, Ethan Burke, Colin Simmons. So we'll see what all continues. But that edge room, Jeff, I can't get more excited than what I am for what the 2025 fall will look like.
And I don't think we've heard a ton about the young edges. We'll throw Justice Terry kind of in that group because he's bouncing back between edge and interior, and Lance Jackson in there also. Haven't heard a ton about those guys because it always goes back to the veterans, and those guys are going to gobble up the snaps. There just aren't a ton of snaps to be had for the young guys in that room. But, hey, at least now where you've moved Trey Moore to linebacker and with Zina out, you've gotten Lance Jackson some valuable reps. You've gotten Justice Terry. We know he's dealt with the hamstring, but he's been able to get some reps. So at least you're starting to manufacture a little depth at a position where you're already deep and really talented.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, again, premium positions. You can never have enough talent. You can never have enough depth. And, of course, that's why it's kind of interesting with Texas having as many scholarships to fill as they do. Do they go out and target a game-changing edge should one enter the portal, right? They brought David Bailey onto campus, who ended up at Texas Tech. Will that be the case? Will another one present itself? We know that they have a Colin Simmons. They know that that room is really talented. What more can they add should that piece become available? I do want to add some quarterback notes because it's Arch Manning season, of course, down here in Austin. Look, I heard a lot of waggles. I heard a lot of passes over the middle. When the ball needs to get out, it gets out. Now, I was told the defense actually had a really solid day in the back end as well. So it wasn't like Texas was just dicing up the coverage. Again, communication, hopefully, on par what we saw last year with Andrew Makuba, Jade Barron, right now Michael Taft, Jelani McDonald leading the way from the back end. But in terms of the younger guys, look, KJ Lacey, when given a pocket, and that was a bit of an issue today for the third-string offensive line, when given a pocket, he looks good rolling out, rolling the ball out on the run, waggles, moving the pocket, whatever. His throws over the middle, Jeff, though, I heard was actually pretty solid as well. And then one of the first plays I actually heard about, Trey Hollins using his leg on a little QB keeper there. Not sure I was expecting that today. Of course, he wasn't hit in the scrimmage. It's not live to quarterbacks. But how about the big fella getting loose downfield?
Hey, look, every year, each of Sark's first 4 years, the guy who started the year as the backup quarterback has started at least 2 games.
That's right.
So if you're Trey Owens and KJ Lacey, it's good that they're taking their reps seriously because history tells you, hey, you may need to be called upon either to finish a game or to get through a week or whatever. I know nobody wants anything to happen to Arch Manning, but that's just the nature of the beast with the position. So a really good battle probably, right now brewing, at least the early stages of it between Trey Owens and KJ Lacey. For that backup job, obviously, and Sark's even talked about it, Trey Owens is ahead because he's been in this program for a full year. KJ Lacey still trying to establish that consistency, just trying to take it from the classroom to the field. Struggling with that a little bit, like all freshmen do a time or two. But at the end of the day, the Texas quarterback room, CJ, it's been healthy for a number of years now. It continues to be healthy. And, Dia Bell was on campus again today. Regardless of what happens with attrition or whatever, it's going to continue to be healthy. And then we'll see what happens in 2027 quarterback recruiting. But Sark and A.J. Mill, we've done a tremendous job, to say the least, of making sure that position is chock full of talent. CJ, any final thoughts from what we heard on the scrimmage today?
Look, I'll add one more note. I was told the first kicker that trotted out after a failed drive in the red zone was Bert Auburn. So, hey, keep that in mind because as we look into the portal, we sit here and kind of ponder whether or not Texas will be active or if Bert Auburn has a resurgence. But I was told today he was your first kicker out there with the first team for a field goal attempt during the scrimmage. On top of that, Jeff, look, the names that we've heard throughout the first week of practice, throughout the second week of practice, are now facing, showing face once again in the third week of practice. And, of course, on the scrimmage field over at Denny's. A positive day for the Longhorns. Of course, we'll see what that looks like after next week's practice and, of course, after practice number 15 to wrap up the spring.
It's been a long Saturday for the OTF crew, especially for CJ. You were out here early hanging out with Ed Orgeron, right?
That's right. He was at practice for a little bit as well. So, Coach O, seeing from one national championship coach, he knows what talent looks like.
He and Sark were on the Pete Carroll staff back in the day at USC, and Coach O, Raheem Morris, Dante Scarnecchia among the coaches here on hand for the clinic, and really good turnout for the clinic. So a lot to be excited about. We've got the fan day details for the 26th. That came out today, so really good time right now to be a Longhorn fan. I know I say that a lot, but Longhorn fans enjoy it, cherish it, relish it, because things are good on the 40 acres. Stay locked into the channel. We'll have the latest if anything breaks. Up-to-the-minute information going on at ontexasfootball.com. Don't forget the promo code OTFOG. Get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $49.95. Again, the promo code OTFOG. For CJ Vogel, for the rest of the On Texas football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you for watching, and until next time, hook 'em.